Now to the meat of our presentation. So your PP loan was approved. What are your next steps? The things that we're going to cover today are what do you do to maximize debt forgiveness? What are the things that you can use the loan for, and what you cannot use the loan for? Also, during this process, VCFO is here to help you. We have a website dedicated to COVID-19, the coronavirus, with lots of information that we keep updated regularly, as well as links to important sites such as the SBA. So what are the next steps? Well, one of the things that we recommend is that you open a separate bank account for your payroll protection plan funds. The reason behind this is so that you can keep a clear and concise audit trail of where you are spending your funds. You are going to work with your lender to review these expenditures to make sure that you maximize your forgiveness. Now, the 8-week period begins on the date the lender makes the first disbursement of the loan for the borrower. This is what is in the SBA's guidance. However, we have learned from a practical standpoint that there are some differences with different financial institutions. So what we recommend is communicate with your financial institution to make sure that you understand when that 8-week period begins and that you and the lender are on the same page. Okay. Again, working immediately with your lender is going to maximize your forgiveness and the forgiveness process. They will be able to give you guidance. They're in communication with the SBA. The other thing that we strongly recommend is to continually monitor the SBA's website updates. As we know, the SBA throughout this whole process has been updating this website on a regular basis. They have the original guidance that has been updated. They also have a section for FAQs that is continually updated. And again, if you go to VCFO's coronavirus website, you will find links to the SBA. And maximize loan forgiveness. To do that, you have to be sure that no more than 25% of the loan amount is attributable to non-payroll costs, okay? And we will go through this in a minute. But that's a very, very important ratio of 75% to payroll costs, 25%, no more than 25% to non-payroll costs. So what do you use the PPP proceeds for to maximize forgiveness over the 8-week measurement period? Well, first and foremost, the idea is for the proceeds to cover payroll costs. So that should be on the top of the list. These include compensation to employees in the form of salary, wages, commissions, cash tips or the equivalent, based on reasonable good faith employer estimates, payments for vacation, payment for medical leave, sick leave, employee benefits. Again, and you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again, work with your lender to make sure that you are including everything in this bucket that you can, and you're not accidentally putting things in there that don't belong in there. Okay. One of the items too is costs related to continuation of group health care benefits during periods where employees may be on paid sick, medical, or family leave and associated insurance premiums. So if somebody is on family leave, cost associated with the continuation of that group health care benefits can be used in the forgiveness calculation. Also, interest on mortgage obligations incurred before February 15th, 2020. Okay, this February 15th, 2020 date is a very important date, and you're going to hear it come up continuously as we go through this. So, rent under lease agreements in force again before February 15th, 2020. Now, on leases, we're not just talking about a lease for a facility. This also includes operating leases for equipment that you use, such as a copier. If you have an operating lease on a copier, that falls into what you can use the proceeds for and be forgiven. Utilities, okay? Again, utilities for which the service began before February 15th, 2020. Again, we highly recommend that you work with your lender to make sure that you are including all of the utilities that you are entitled to include. Interest payments on any other debt obligations that were incurred before February 15th, 2020. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, that February 15th, 2020 is a very important date when it comes to determining what you can include. Now, what is expressly excluded from loan forgiveness? In other words, what you should not use proceeds for. Independent contractors. Now we know over time there has been some mixed guidance on independent contractors. Originally, I think the SBA had independent contractors in calculations. Independent contractors were taken out of calculations. The latest ruling from the SBA is that independent contractors are expressly excluded. The rationale behind this is that an independent contractor can go and apply for their own loan under the PPP program. Also, any compensation paid to an employee whose principal place of residence is outside of the United States. Now, there's very little guidance in relation to what outside the United States is. So this is something that we might recommend that you talk to someone such as employment counsel about what category a certain employee falls into if they are not in the United States. A very important one, any compensation paid to an individual employee who has an annual salary in excess of $100,000, and that is prorated over the 8-week period. You also cannot use it for federal employment taxes imposed or withheld between, again, that date of February 15th, 2020 and June 30th, 2020. And qualified sick and family leave wages for which a credit is allowed under sections 7001 and 7003 of the Families vs. Coronavirus Response Act. I will note, however, employers making required payments for COVID-19 sick or family leave time are eligible for reimbursement through payroll tax credits via a 941 payroll reduction. Also important, while interest is allowable, mortgage prepayments and principal payments are expressly excluded from loan forgiveness. Now, next, what can you do to maximize your loan forgiveness? And again, work with your lender. Talk to your lender about the timing of the first disbursement of the loan to help you best maximize your ability to spend funds on payroll. If you do what we recommend, opening a separate account for PPP funds, it does not mean you wait on that account to get the funds dispersed. Don't have your lender sit on funds because they said, oh, we hadn't opened your account yet. Have them disperse them into your operating account and then move them over. Okay? And very important, work with your lender. Rehires. You have until June 30th, 2020 to restore full-time employees and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th, 2020 and April 26th, 2020. Maintain full-time equivalents compared to the base period. Now, I will note, while the guidance might talk about full-time equivalents, it does not define what a full-time equivalent is. We are seeking and expecting additional guidance on what the definition of FTEs are. Talk to your lender about it. Go to the SBA's website. Go to VCFO's COVID-19 website to find the latest information. Maintain salary and wages to at least a 75% level compared to base period. When you are looking at restoring wages, it does not have to be to the 100% level it was pre-COVID-19, but it does have to be to a 75% level. Okay, additional considerations. Deferments of payroll tax payments under CARES Act are not available to employers with forgiven loans under the PPP program. An eligible employer that receives a payroll protection plan loan cannot receive the employee retention credits under the CARES Act. In other words, what they're doing is they're saying you cannot go get benefit under the multiple tools that are available out there. And again, I've reiterated this quite a few times now. Follow the SBA guidance precisely on use of funds to optimize forgiveness. Again, work with your financial institution on this because you're going to be working with your financial institution. Your financial institution is going to be working with the SBA. We expect over the next few weeks financial institutions to be asking for clarity from the SBA. So let's make sure you keep this communication open. Make sure you follow the guidance precisely, because if you don't, you can be significantly penalized for not following it. Also, importantly, forgiven amounts will not be considered cancellation of indebtedness income for federal income tax purposes. Okay, so now Regina and Daryl have been watching for questions coming in, and so we're available to answer any questions that anybody might have. Okay, so there we go. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen a few questions come in. And I've seen one come in. Well, there's an app that we're looking at, and I'd like to tackle one of them, which is someone has asked about when setting up a separate bank account, should I set up an account with a separate bank? And I'd like to answer that maybe in two parts. So the PPP loans do not require that any sort of a collateral or personal guarantees were required for being able to apply to receive the money. And I'm not aware of anything in the guidance that would say that the lender has something called domain over the funds. There may be other elements of the relationship with the lender that need to be taken into account, but I don't think there's a requirement that they have to stay with, I guess, the lender and one bank. So the question, though, is should you set up an account at a separate bank? And I think that's a very good question. Back in 2008, 2009, there was a lot of, there was a lot of discussion about what sort of protection limits there might be on bank accounts held at financial institutions and also accounts held with brokerages. So you should probably be aware of, what is and is not covered under FDIC and SPIC, which are basically insurance products that cover amounts on deposit with financial institutions. And just be aware of what those are should your controls be such that you want to make sure you're fully protected with your funds on deposit with those financial institutions. So a long-winded answer to say there's a couple of details there, but it's a great question. It's one that I've had as I've looked at some of the monies coming across.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl. And as to what Daryl said, we did have a question where if you do open a separate bank account, should I tie my payroll account to this bank account? I would recommend not tying this separate PPP account to your payroll account or your payroll processing because there are payroll items that are not going to be included in the loan forgiveness. So it's best that you create your paper trail, and after you run your payroll run, go through and identify those amounts that will be part of your loan forgiveness and then transfer those out of your PPP bank account, so to speak. Okay. All right. And I just wanted to let you guys know if we run out of time as we're answering these questions that we will be posting these questions and answers on our VCFO website. If you actually go to our VCFO website directly, we do have a coronavirus page specifically for questions and links that are helpful for you guys. Okay, let's see.
I'd like to take another question if it's okay.
Sure.
So I see one that says, unfortunately, my loan, my PPP loan was funded before the SBA changed their mind, changed the rules about 1099 contractors. Now what? Another great question. So the guidance that I've read has said that there's no requirement that you have to go back and rework your paperwork. So that was the first level answer. What we understand will happen with the amounts that have been included in the loan and the proceeds is that unless you are able to spend them on defined eligible items, which Jennifer covered today, that anything that you can't spend, or if you have excess, it's going to become a loan to the borrower. And so you can't use the money, for example, to pay contractors after you received it. So if you have monies that are left over, it should become a loan that will end up being paid over a 2-year period. You can pay that back. You can prepay it at any time. And I think the interest rate's pretty low, like 1%. But I wanted to address that because I've read a little bit about that and realized that some borrowers were early in the process. They included contractors in their amounts.
But hey, everybody, it's Amber again. Just want to do a quick reminder, because I'm seeing a lot of hands get raised, is that you need to use the Slido app for your questions. It's Slido, S-L-I-D-O, and the code for Slido is 52140. Again, that's 52140. I'm going to let the VCFO team take over again.
Okay. All right. Okay, here's a great question. The question is, for employees with salaries over $100,000, is the excluded amount only the salary portion, or does it include any related benefits paid for employees, such as medical and dental benefits? That's a great question, but currently it's just based on the $100,000 salary. So you are allowed to include the benefit portion in your loan forgiveness amount. Let's see.
I'll take another question here, and I'll attempt to answer this one. The question is, we did pay deferrals, presumably in the 8-week period. So pay must have been deferred up, prior to the proceeds of the loan in this situation. Is this covered in the loan forgiveness when we pay it back to our employees? So while there's no specific guidance on this, our assumption after reading the way you will have to document what you use the proceeds for is that we understand it will be on a cash basis. So the answer to your question is that eligible payments considered to be payroll cost or payroll items in the 8-week period, including a deferral, would be eligible for a loan forgiveness. Repeat, however, that this is a question that you should bring up with your lender. You should discuss this and other, definitional things with them so that you understand that, prior to the end of the 8 weeks, that these would be covered or not covered items. So I would take this question up with them as soon as you can.
All right. So I have another question. It's about employees that are not, their principal residence is outside the United States. This question is, I have employees in Mexico. Should I separate the payroll out of the different bank accounts? When you don't need to actually separate these employees out of your bank account. What you would need to do is when you actually run your payroll reports and you come up with your wages that will be included in your loan forgiveness, you'll just have to remember you need to exclude these wages. Any employees that are their principal resident is outside the United States, you'll just have to do a little reconciliation with your payroll and pull these wages out of your amounts. Okay, sorry. The questions are coming in quickly.
How about I'll try one? And thank you all for asking these questions. They're ones that we've had two different scenarios and examples, and the facts of how they come to be sometimes can make a difference in the answer. So here's a question I'm curious about. Are utilities expenses? Is it the amounts paid during the 8-week period, or do they have to be for the services rendered during the 8-week period? So again, this is going to be a question, that I would bring for sure to the lender so that you would document the items that you are paying in the 8 weeks. And again, I think the assumption that we have based on what we've read is that this is a cash basis approach, and they're going to look at what you've dispersed from the date of your loan until the end of the 8-week period. So again, without saying I can point you to a rule or a regulation or an FAQ from the SBA, I think what we're saying is that we believe it to be cash basis, not not an accrual basis, meaning they've provided services to you. The other part of that answer is that after reading the guidance, that the underlying agreements that you had with your utilities vendors should be in place prior to February 15th, 2020. That is a very good question. It's one that many people have.
All right, so it looks like we may have time for one more question. I have one right here. It's this question is, if I did not include my rent in my original application calculation of the PPP loan, can I still use my PPP proceeds to pay my rent and use it as forgiveness? And that question, yes, you still would be able to use your proceeds to pay your rent. What you'll just need to make sure is that no more than 25% of the proceeds that are used are for other items besides payroll. So as long as you have 75% of your payroll, the loans going to your payroll proceeds, you can use the other 25% to pay for your loan. I'm sorry, to pay for your rent.
Okay. Thank you, Regina and Daryl, for taking the time to answer those questions. One last thing that we would like to bring up is that the House of Representatives has now approved stage 2 of the PPP funding, and we expect it to become law at any point in time now. If you have not submitted your application, time is of the essence. We highly recommend you get it in as soon as possible. As I've mentioned a couple times, VCFO has a website with lots of information and links related to COVID-19. We regularly update the website and the links. We will also have a landing page related to this presentation. Also, please join us next Friday as we continue to discuss what steps should be taken after PPP funding. And from all of us at VCFO, we would like to thank you and thank Amber and ATC for giving us the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone at VCFO for putting this together. This information and this legislation is coming out so quickly that everybody has questions, and we're actually going to keep Slido open for another hour, so until 1 p.m. So if you have more questions or you think of things that come up, we're going to be downloading these and sending these over to the VCFO team so that they can put that information together. We'll get it out to the attendees on the call today, as well as they'll have that up on their website too. So we want to get information out to you as quickly as we can. If you'd like to connect directly with the VCFO team and need assistance, please contact ATC at info@austintechnologycouncil.org. Again, that's info@austintechnologycouncil.org, and we'll get you connected with the VCFO team. Or if you're having trouble with your lender and need assistance in finding a lender, we have two great banks, Regions Bank and BBVA, that are both taking part in the PPP program and have successfully worked with their clients through this. So if you need assistance in meeting a lender or any other type of questions or answers, please reach out to us, and we're happy to get you in touch with the person that can assist you the best. We thank you all for coming on board today and taking part in this. We will have this again next week, and we're very excited about that. But in the meantime, the Slido questions will be open till 1 o'clock today. We'll be downloading those, getting that to the VCFO team, and they will be putting together answers that we'll be able to get out to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Make sure you wear your mask when you go outside, and make sure you're washing your hands as much as possible. Thank you so much. Take care, and we hope to see you all in person very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.